Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, folks. How you doing? It's Danny Tisdale, and it's the Danny Tisdale Show. You know that better than I do because that's why you're tuning in. I hope you're all well today. And as I'm not going to say the middle of the coronavirus, but we're at the tail end of it, so says our governor. And we'll get to that in a second. But as you know, as I said, it's Harlem World Radio, and it's Danny Tisdale Show. And if you have any questions or want to reach out for us, maybe you've got a great guest that you think we should have on the line, don't forget to hit us up all across social media at Harlem World Magazine and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. All you have to do is just put Harlem World Magazine in that bar and hit enter and check us out. And as we do each week is to speak to leader, legend, and trailblazer in the world of Harlem, the greatest community in the world, of course. And today we have a guest who is a little delayed. He is an elected official, so he is working. And so as we wait for him, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on. I listened to Governor Cuomo's press conference today, and one thing that he mentioned is that he has an executive order where every New Yorker has to wear a mask if they are going into a business. It is an executive order to wear a mask. There is not an option. And if I understand this correctly, you will be arrested. And if you're not arrested, you'll be fined. And I think it's depending on your response, what happens, and hopefully not a problematic response. Also, the governor talked about, let's go to another point here.
I'm here with you. If you're going to another point, just to wait for me, because I'm with you right now.
Are going down across the great city, and that's a good new thing that we are all excited about. And also talked about the fact that he is looking at metrics when he makes his decisions on what we do next as New Yorkers and in New York City, should I say. And that's a good thing. We want those numbers to go down as much as possible and hopefully use that as an example across our great nation, that we look at the numbers to make decisions on what we do. Just like we do here at Harlem World Magazine, we look at the data to make decisions on our moves and what we do and how we do it. The governor also talked about, yes, is that
yes, this is
Mr. Adams?
Adams. How are you? Listen to some
yes,
of your
sir.
great
How are you
commentaries.
doing?
Quite well.
Well, fantastic. I just want to let our listeners know, Mr. Adams, Eric Adams, that you are what we love, and that is a trailblazer. And on top of that, you're a Harlem fave, and he just so happens to be Borough President of Brooklyn. We know that you were a Democratic State Senator in the New York Senate. In 2013, you were elected to the Borough President role that you're in, and you're the first African American to hold the position. Prior to your service in government, you worked as a police officer for the NYPD for 22 years. And I'm going to leave it to our readers to find out more about your incredible journey. And just to add that of recent, you had diabetes and took it upon yourself to find ways to take care of that. And in 6 months, I understand that you went on a plant-based diet and lost 30 pounds. Now, before we get into all that, I want to ask you, who inspired you on the long journey that you've been on to get involved in politics?
You know, there's a saying that man makes plans and God laughs. You know, where I am right now is not who I started out to be, and I found myself along, this journey to have to adjust not only to the circumstances but to what your purpose is. And I'm still in pursuit of my purpose, and I believe that on the way I'm learning the skills that I needed to find my true purpose and true fulfillment. We all have a role on why we're here. We're not accidents, and I want to live it out to my full potential. And that is what evolved me to be the borough president, a state senator, and a former police officer. It was nowhere in my plans at all.
Well, that's an amazing. You have an amazing story, and that's quite an interesting and amazing response. But and it makes sense at the same time because we all kind of ask that question sometimes. Well, why are we here? There must be a larger reason of why are we here and what is my purpose? And did that just happen one day, or did you see it coming, or the clouds parted and the sun shined and this music came and it happened, or how did that come about? And
you know what? That's such a great question to ask in the manner that you did, because of what I've learned over this journey, and I hope your listeners will appreciate this, is that I think that the universe speaks to us. We have so much distractions in our lives that we don't turn down the volume and allow ourselves the opportunities to listen and to hear. And I just learned over time, listen to the messages, look at the signals that are telling you you're on the right path and the right roadway. It's like when you're driving down the road, the signs are telling you how many miles you have remaining, what is the direction to that temporary destination, when you have to take some detours. And so that's what happened. When I was a child at 15, it was my desire to be a computer programmer. I wanted to become Cisco qualified, and I was always fascinated with computers. I think I could have been the next or the first Steve Jobs, but I was arrested as a child, and after a serious beating by the police, it inspired me to go into the police department and become a police officer. So that was an adjustment that I had to make. Now, while I was a police officer, I saw how horrific people were living and arresting young people who couldn't write their names. I understood that bad policies were creating these bad outcomes, and that moved me to become a state senator. And after being a state senator, I saw that local politics were important, as well as after I learned how to write laws, and that is how I became the borough president. So it was just really evolving to what was in front of me and not being afraid of the change and welcome the change.
I'm telling you, I didn't know all of that backstory, and I just love anyone, anywhere who puts their money where their mouth is as another metaphor, and it seems to be that based on your experiences and what you feel, you kind of activate yourself to be activated to take care of whatever business it is that's going on that you see that's problematic. And, one additional connection that I had in looking at your bio is, of course, being a police officer. I have a brother who spent 25, I think, if not 30 years as a LAPD police officer and detective. But, I love my brother, but I knew that him coming out of Vietnam and then becoming a police officer might not be the best formula for him or for, let me just say, others. How do you think, and we can talk about, I guess, what's happened in Minneapolis and what's happened across the country. How do we I don't know if fix is the right word, but solve some of these issues happening in police departments across our wonderful nation.
And they are real, Danny. They are real, and it's probably you and I may need to do a series around how to do it.
Right.
But let me start with this. The quote by Jack Nicholson, and I think it was the movie A Few Good Men. I'm not sure exactly which one it was, when he says that we really don't want to know the truth. And the reality is that there are a large number of Americans and New Yorkers that have turned their backs on how aggressive policing has impacted communities. You know, we knew that we would use the stop and frisk to stop 1 million plus black and brown boys in the city every year. But, you know, people said we need to bring crime down, and so what if they are the casualties of that battle? We knew even now, currently, how we were treating black and brown communities based on the enforcement of social distancing. So the question becomes, it's not what black and brown people are saying about aggressive policing, but where are the decent people in the city? Where are our religious leaders that are not of color? Where are our business people that run major enterprises? When Minneapolis burns down, so too will their business burn down. The Newark riots, the Watts riots, the Detroit riots, the Los Angeles riots, haven't we learned that we cannot permanently detach ourselves from things that are happening wrong in communities? And so we need to wake up and realize we're in this together, and they need to be more vocal and ensure that our police departments serve and protect all citizens.
So, Mr. Adams, is it a policy issue? Is it a feet on the ground issue? Is it and I don't want to use the shotgun approach versus a one bullet approach. I don't want to use, that kind of example. But is it a policy issue to fix these issues? I think I know what your answer is going to be, but I wanted to ask you that.
It's a combination of what we need to do. We have to redefine policing. Policing has, for the most part, it has not changed from the days when police were created around the whole issue of slave trade and finding running away slaves. We have to redefine policing. A police agency used correctly could be the most important proactive tool to protect communities and build a symbiotic relationship. Remember, police are given two of the most important abilities in what's important to our American society. They can take away life, and they can take away liberty. Even the president can't do that. And so the standards we hold for policing must be so high. And if we don't redefine it to tell police that you can't go into one community and correct a condition with just a hammer, but go into other communities with every tool in your toolbox, until we change that mindset, we're never going to have the type of policing we need in America. We're too attached to our past and historical role of policing to start moving away from that.
It all makes sense, and I want to ask you this question because somebody out there is listening and saying, maybe saying, what can I do? What do you say to our readers who are in Harlem, in Brooklyn, across the nation, and across the world? 22% of our listeners are outside the United States. What can they do?
And there's so much you can do. You know, there was a commercial when I was a child. A man came out of the hospital carrying his baby and saw all the smog and pollution. He said, the song said, "What can one man do, my friend? What can one man do?" There's so much one person could do.
Right.
Carry around police applications and recruit young people in your lives that they would make great police officers. Inspire them to become police officers. or you become a police officer yourself and change from within. As I stated, an individual should enroll and say, let me do this job so that I can show people how to do it correctly. And then hold meetups inside your local precincts or local police stations or service areas where you introduce the police to your community residents. Do roundtables. Do joint meditation together so that you can learn some of the emotional trauma of policing, and so that police can see people not only when they call them during a scene of emergency, but when they call them in good times as well. Know the birthdays of all the cops in your station. Have children send them cards, happy birthday. Let's humanize policing, and you will see the attitude change right away. People need police to stabilize communities, and communities need the people they serve to ensure that there's a good relationship.
That is one of the best advice tips I've heard regarding this issue, where one can be proactive. And, I based on just you saying that, I think what we will start doing at Harlem World Magazine is start adding programming that includes our local police precincts in Harlem and wherever they may be, so that, little or huge or somewhere in the middle, we will see, we'll try to change the face of at least our relationship with the police department. And Mr. Adams, I just want to let our listeners know they're listening to Danny Tisdale, and they're listening to the Danny Tisdale Show on Harlem World Radio. Harlem World Magazine is an independently owned company, so please hit that orange Patreon button at the bottom and become a patron. And we're speaking to Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and just great conversation, advice, and tips along the way in our journey here. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is so many questions, because every time I ask you a question and you answer, I have about 30 more questions. And, of course, we've got 15 minutes left, and that won't work. But what advice, Borough President, would you have for someone who wants to follow in your shoes? There's somebody out there listening, as I said before, who, loves what you're saying, loves your passion, and they're saying, you know what, I want to be like this guy. What advice do you have for him or her?
Never stop evolving. Sometimes people look at my bio and my resume, and I'm going to create a failure section of my resume, because we sometimes look at the success of people, but I want people to know how imperfect I am. There are days I wish I would have gotten out of bed, and days I wish I would have stayed in bed. I've made so many mistakes, and I've hit what I thought was the end of the road just to learn that it was a bend of the road, and all I had to do was turn. And so if I can tell people anything, none of us are perfect. That is not part of the DNA of a human being. Imperfection is wired into us. And so don't beat yourself up. There's always another day. We spend too much time reflecting on what we didn't do and reflecting on the fears of what could happen, that we're not in the present. Stay in the present. Enjoy every moment of this journey, because you can speak to the most successful people in life, and they would tell you the beauty of their accomplishment lies in the fact that there were moments of struggle and they came through it. So cycle through the struggles and continue to evolve, and do something that I think is so important that I've learned to do. Reintroduce yourself to someone that you're around but you forgot all about, and that is yourself. Learn how your mind operates. Learn the power of nutrition. Learn how your brain retains things. Learn about PTSD. Learn about reliving trauma over and over again and how it is erosive to your body. And learn healthy foods and the importance of exercise. Our bodies are machines, and they need certain things to operate. And we pay more attention to the oil we put in our cars or the clothing we put on our backs than what it takes to operate something that's important as the gift of our human bodies. And so I would encourage people, just reintroduce yourself to yourself, and you can start this great relationship all over again.
Yeah, you talked about self and health and those wonderful things, and here we are in the, I'm not going to say midst of the coronavirus. I guess in some ways, in a lot of ways, we're at the end of it, knock on wood, if that still applies. I don't know. I don't get the virus if I hit some wood. You've lost 30 pounds, and from what I understand, lost the treatment of having diabetes. I mean, I think I know the answer, because I can tell that you are kind of a scheduled person, and when you want to do something, you put your mind to it, it happens. But how did that happen? I understand that it was through a plant-based diet. Dr. Ponyman had mentioned this to me. Is that what happened? Is that still the diet that you're on?
Yes, but two things I want to deal with. One, and it's important for your listeners to know, we're not at the tail end of COVID-19. This is a new norm. Scientists have been telling us that pandemics, superbugs, viruses, our over-fixation and consumption of large producers of poultry and other meat byproducts is creating many of these pandemics. And my presidents of hospitals are telling me in October and November, coronavirus may come back with a vengeance added on to the flu season. So we're in a serious place, and we have to change what we're doing. And little did I know, when I was told I was diabetic, I thought I was buried with the chronic disease, but I was actually planted. And I lost my sight in my left eye. I was losing my right. Ophthalmologist told me I was legally blind. I had to give up my driver's license. I had what they call permanent nerve damage in my hands and feet that could eventually lead to amputation. Had an ulcer, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all the things that, you know, many people are walking and living with every day and taking medicine thinking that it is assisting them when it's just covering up their symptoms. And I decided that I did not want to live the life of my mother and my brothers and my sisters. My mother was diabetic for 15 years and 7 years on insulin. And I decided to go and do something that was very significant. And the power of words, the pamphlet I had said how to live with diabetes. But when I sat down at the computer, I didn't type living with diabetes. Danny, I typed reversing diabetes. And that one word sent me down a different pathway. And I met doctors that told me what I needed to do to reverse my diabetes. And after going through what's called a whole food plant-based diet, 3 weeks my sight came back. 3 months my nerve damage went away. And my advanced stage of diabetes went in remission. My ulcer went away. My blood pressure normalized. My cholesterol normalized. As you stated, I dropped 30-plus pounds and never felt better. You know, I have not been in this shape even when I was 19, 20 years old. I'm at optimum shape of my life. And it was because I did not go the traditional path. I'm a non-traditional person, but I'm not a special person. Everyone has that non-traditional inside them. We just have to give them what they need to awaken it.
Again, love it, and it sounds that, like you're saying, obviously, that this is something that anyone can do. But as I'm sure some of my listeners are going to get tired of me saying this, and I say it frequently, and I always say that my football coach gave me one of the best things that I always remember when I get off track, and he would always say, get your mind right, and the body will follow. You know, get focused on what your goals are, do what you need to do to get to the goals, and the body will follow. And it sounds a lot like, in some words, what you're saying. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it reminds me of that. And, you know, as I knew what happened, we're at about 6 minutes left, and I'm going to, of course, do what I always do with guests, and that's to ask them questions I didn't prepare them for. But I'm listening to you, and I know your history from reading your bio. We got on this call while you were doing a presentation, and what do you do to escape? And maybe escape's the wrong word, to kind of reset yourself, to kind of, have quiet time. If you have quiet time, what do you do to kind of press the reset button for yourself and, get a second win and to, start again if that's the right words?
No, and I think that's a great question. I'm a big believer that we have a physical body and there's an anatomy of our spirit. And you go to a chiropractor to realign your spine, you need to find ways of realigning your spirit. Right. And I do it through meditation. Some people do it through yoga, but you have to go inward. The power of healing inward is amazing. And that was part of what I learned after policing and getting even deeper as I embrace health. But it's about sitting down and realigning yourselves. The toxic environment that we're in is so far from our natural being. We're not meant to be around metal, brick, traffic, and crisis all the time. That is not who we are. And so if you do not realign yourself, you will find yourself in this perpetual state of fight and flight. The body is not built to be in a continuous state of fight and flight. You're supposed to be in fight and flight for a moment, finish outrunning a lion, a tiger, and a bear. But now that lion, and tiger, and the bear has turned into the boss that we don't like. It has turned into our spouse that we dislike. It's turned into when someone cut us off, or we didn't get the raise that we like, or our children got us angry. We're in a perpetual state of fight and flight, and that is erosive to our human makeup. And if you don't turn that off, your body will never have the opportunity to heal. And so I've learned how to turn it off, and I encourage your listeners and your readers to find their place of getting out of the fight and flight mode, and they can start the process of healing.
Fantastic, and I knew that this conversation would fly by as it has, but I want to make sure that our listeners, wherever they are, can stay in contact with you and understand and read and see the change that you're bringing both in Brooklyn, both in yourself and in the others around you. How can our listeners stay in contact with you, Borough President?
They can reach me. I'm on all the social media sites at BP Eric Adams. They can reach me there. And if anyone is interested in the whole food plant-based diet that I was talking about and what I did and what I gave to my mother, by the way, she was also experiencing a high level of diabetes. She, after 2 months going to a whole food plant-based diet, mom is now having an extremely healthy lifestyle at the same time. So she's
Go,
also
Mom.
insulin. And so people can also go to my email as well. My Ask Eric email is at askeric at deep. Let me tell you again. Is askeric at brooklynbp.nyc.gov. And I would send them any information. They just have to say health, and I would send them information.
Fantastic. Borough President, can you give that email one more time? I just want to make sure that they get it.
And that's askeric at brooklynbp.nyc.gov.
Thank you so much, sir, and it is a pleasure speaking to you and having you on the show and to talk about the wonderful work you're doing, and thank you for giving me the idea for editorial for the police department. Thank you, sir. Love the conversation.
Thank you.
And all the best to you.
All right. Be well. Thank you.
You too. Well, folks, love the conversation with Borough President Eric Adams, and we'll share the information with you online, the email to ask questions about the diet. All the best to you. Take care. Stay healthy.